All righty. Here we go back at the front page, a game official from an educational perspective. So we got a lot to cover. Let's go ahead and get started here. All right. I put this on here because I want to cover this before we get started, just to lay a foundation. I always try to lay some type of foundation before we get started. So this is the foundation I want to lay today. The rules that we are reviewing are based on the National Federation of State High School Association. While some terminology, fouls, and penalties may be similar to those used in the NCAA or NFL, there are significant differences in the rules, definitions, and how penalties are enforced. It's important to understand that each level, high school, college, and professional, has its own distinct rule book and administrative procedures. So no matter if we're talking about the National Federation, which you might hear me just dub it as federation rules. Are we talking about the NCAA? Are we talking about the NFL? What I see, what I experience when I work with other officials out there is that we confuse and we inflate the rules that they cross over boundaries, and they do not. And it's so very important to understand that what we're talking about here are the National Federation high school rules, which we are supposed to be, when we're doing youth games or high school games, these are the rules that we go by. We don't go by NCAA and we don't go by NFL. So when you say you know the rules, my question is, which rules are you referring to? All right. For example, you know one of my big pet peeves when we say the word offsides. Offsides does not exist in the federation rules. It is available in college rules, it's available in the NFL, but it really irks me every time I hear that word offsides because it does not exist in our terminology. All right? Just like an automatic first down for pass interference doesn't exist in our penalties and administrative procedures. So it's very important, and that's the reason why we do these classes, is to educate everyone on what does the federation rules say, in particular how to administer a foul, not what you see on Saturdays on college or what you see in the NFL on Sundays. Those don't apply. And I see a lot of officials using those misapplying the rules because they're going by another different division. Like always, players who practice long hours deserve competent game officials who have a complete understanding of the letter as well as the spirit and intent of the rules and who administer them consistently and fairly. So today, as we go through this, we're going to talk a lot about the case book. I've been introducing this book for some time now, and it's good to know the rules. That's the first step. But if you're trying to get if you want an in-depth and understand what the rules, if you want to misapply the rules, you have to have the case book. And I give examples why the case book is so important when we go through these Rule 3, 5, 10. All right, let's go over our objectives. We have 4 objectives today instead of 3, so that's going to be the extended time. To review the Rule 3, 5, 10 and its focus on player safety. To teach game officials how to correctly administer an injured player timeout. To teach game officials how to recognize illegal and improper worn players' equipment. And teach game officials how to correctly enforce player equipment violations, along with the NFHS suggestions for chronic violators. Now, I believe someone last week asked, what do you do when somebody continue to violate this rule? If we have time, I'm going to show you some examples. I went on YouTube again just a few minutes ago and found examples of player equipment violations and how the officials didn't do anything about it. But we'll look at that here in a little bit. The biggest thing here is that I want to cover a lot. Let's get started. Here we go. All right. Rule 3, 5, 10. And we're going to read all of this, and then we'll go back and go from there. An official's timeout, which is not charged to either team, occurs when the player shall be replaced for at least 1 down, unless halftime intermission or an overtime intermission occurs. An apparently injured player, an apparent injured player is discovered by a game official while the ball is dead, and the game clock is stopped, and for whom the ready for play is delayed, or for whom the game or play clock is stopped. B, any player who exhibits signs, symptoms, or behaviors consistent with a concussion, and then list some here, shall be immediately removed from the game and shall not return to play until cleared by an appropriate healthcare professional. C, a game official discovers any player who is bleeding, has an open wound, has any amount of blood on his or her uniform, or has blood on his or her person. The person shall be directed to leave the game until the bleeding is stopped, and would be cleared, and would be the wound covered, the uniform or body is appropriately cleaned, and or the uniform is changed before returning to competition. D, the helmet comes completely off during the down or subsequent dead ball actions related to the down without being directly attributed to the foul by an opponent. And E, any required player equipment missing or improperly worn. So let's focus on one first. And again, what I want you to, when we read rules, and I understand when you read rules, sometimes we just read them, but we just don't comprehend them, right? We just read it real fast, we gloss over it. I know that's a big thing here, a big thing that happens. So we want to make sure we break this down. So looking at A, and we're talking about an apparent injured player. There's three things I want to focus on. One, it was discovered by a game official. So a game official noticed that there was blood or a player injured. And then the ready for play was delayed. In other words, the game clock wasn't really stopped, but the ball wasn't put down, or we held the offense from snapping the ball. We delayed the ready for play, or the game or play clock is stopped. All right. So we have an injured player discovered by a game official, the ready for play was delayed, or the game clock was stopped. So let's look at a case play. All right. And again, this is the case book. And if you don't read the case book and if you just read the rule book, it's very easy to get a misapplication of the rules, which we'll show here shortly. So situation 5, 3-5-10, A. A game official stopped the clock, our play clock, when he noticed quarterback A1 has a bloody nose. A1 is directed to go to his team box. The coach of A then requests a timeout, and A1's bleeding stopped during the timeout. A1 re-enters with other teammates following the timeout. Ruling: A1 must remain in the team box for at least one down. A timeout called after a game official has stopped the game or play clock for an injured player does not allow the injured player to remain in the game. Any conference during the official timeout must be held outside the 9-yard mark. If the coach's request for a charge timeout is granted, either type of conference may be used. But A1 may not re-enter the game until one play has elapsed and cannot participate in an on-field conference. So let's look at the ruling and break this down. 1, A1 must remain in the team box for at least one down. So even though the official timeout and the coach decided to call a timeout right after the official timeout, this does not give the player an opportunity to stay in the game. Now, I believe in college, it does. But a player get injured in an NCAA game and a coach call a timeout, he can buy back the player with that timeout. So this is, again, a big difference between NCAA and high school. In high school, no matter if the coach called a timeout or not, the player may not re-enter the game until one play has elapsed. So let's look further. Any conference during the official timeout must be held outside the 9-yard marks. Now, why? Because the game official stopped the game clock. This is an official timeout. And we see here When there's an injury, you have to have your conferences outside the 9 yard mark. You can't have it on the in between the 9 yard mark. Now, I remember a while ago, I used to hear officials say, "Oh, you can't coach your players during an injury timeout." Not necessarily true. You Players can go to their sideline and be coached during an injury timeout, but only on the outside 9 yard marks. But there's a caveat to that, and let's cover this caveat. First, let's look at this right quick. We see an authorized conference may be held during, but let's look at B, and then look at C. Only an outside 9 yard conference may be held in 3588. So what is 3588? Well, 358A3 is right above it if granted by the referee in 3510, which we're covering. So what I want you to understand here, that just because there's an injured player does not automatically guarantee a team can have an outside the 9 yard mark conference. It's only if the referee granted. And the reason why I say that is I remember we had a game just a couple weeks ago, where a player got injured. So I called an official timeout. And as soon as I called official timeout, they had that player up and off the field. But on the other side, they was already with water on the field, coaches on the field. And I'm like, what are y'all doing? I didn't grant a timeout. Okay. The clock's about to start back up, everybody off the field. So understand, I know we do it like unconsciously, but before you give an injury conference timeout, you have to grant it. If you think it's going to be there a little longer, the players look injured and they're going to be sitting there grant that outside the 9 yard mark conference and let them talk to their coaches and things of that nature until the injured players off the field. But if you think it's going to be quick and the player's not going to be on the field that long, you don't have to grant that timeout. It's not guaranteed and it's not automatic. It has to be granted by the referee. Okay, now, if a coach calls a timeout, now they can use either obviously after the injured player is removed, they can use it inside the 9 yard mark conference or between the 9 yard marks, let's put it that way, or outside the 9 yard marks. Okay, and again, if it's going to be between the 9 yard marks, only one coach and water personnel only who's not a coach. If it's outside the 9 yard marks, anyone can be there. Why? Because the coach requested that timeout, and so he's authorized to have both types of conferences. Now, the other one I want you to notice here is A1 cannot participate in an on-field conference. Try to enforce that if you want. It may be quite difficult to try to tell the coach that A1 is injured and he has to remain in the team box. He cannot participate in the charge conferences. But hey, we want to cover this. We want you to notice what the rules say and how you administer it is between you and your crew chief. Now, what I want to do is cover this one more time. A1 must remain in the team box for at least one down. A charge timeout called after the official timeout does not allow an injured player to remain in the game. A1 may not re-enter the game until one play elapses. An official timeout team conference must be outside the 9 yard marks unless we have a charge timeout and now they can have it between the 9 yards or outside the 9 yard marks, and A1 cannot participate in an on-field conference. Now, I sent out a poll. I think about 6 people responded to it, I believe. Let's see here. Let's see how many people. Y'all didn't want to take my poll. Okay, 14 people responded to the poll. 2 said The question on the poll was, can a charge timeout prevent an injured player to return to the game without taking it off? And 2 people said yes, a timeout can. 10 people said no. And 2 people said it depends. 3 people said it depends. What we just read, it says the answer would be no, right? However, this is why it's so important to get into the case book. Because now we're going to look at another play, another situation in 3-5-10. Situation B. A1 has an open wound or a scratch on his arm. In A, Team A takes a charge timeout before the wound is noticed by a game official. Okay, so A1 called a charge timeout before the wound was noticed by a game official. Now up here, in the first one we read, when he noticed, so this was saying they called timeout before the game official noticed. Look at the ruling. In A, if A1's wound is properly treated before the timeout ends, he may return to the game immediately. So what are we saying? It all depends who noticed it first, right? If it's noticed by the game official, and if the game official called an official timeout, the injured player must sit out of play. However, if it's noticed by the coach first, and he called a charge timeout, the injured player may return to play. So the correct answer is, it depends. It depends on who called the timeout first, or who noticed the injured player first. So an injured player can remain in the game on a charge timeout only if a coach called the timeout before the game official noticed that injured player. All right, so that's your answer, and I hope you learned something new today that you did not know. But this is why it's so important, again, to be in the case book. Because if you're not in the case book, and all you do is go off the rules and not use the case book to help you learn how to apply the rules to the game, then you may apply a misapplication. You may think, oh, you got to go off the field no matter what, because he's injured, and that is not true. So let's look at the next one. Any player who exhibits signs, symptoms, or behaviors consistent with a concussion shall be immediately removed from the game and shall not return to play until cleared by an appropriate healthcare professional. Now, this is what's in the back of the book, talking about concussions. Now, I did send an email out asking everyone to take the concussion course. It's free, it doesn't hurt, and it just elevates your knowledge, right? Again, I take the course. If I tell you to take something, I'm going to take it. That's my proof. I took it on 8/21/2025. A couple of people did take it, and they sent me a copy of their certificate. Thank you. But again, this is something that we do as game officials. It's not about just going out there and making money. It's not about just going out there BSing and just doing whatever. Again, you're masquerading as a game official. You put on a costume. It's not a uniform. And so when we notice you don't get mad, you don't get the big games. All right. Any player who exhibits signs, it says, and shall not return until cleared by an appropriate healthcare professional. Guys, I just want to cover this part here. Hold on. All right. This is out of the National Federation of High School. The game official is not responsible for sideline evaluation or management of the athlete after he or she is removed from play. In other words, we don't say, oh, he can't come in. All right. We don't evaluate players. We recognize the symptoms, we set them off, but it's not our job to evaluate the player if they have a concussion or not. If an appropriate healthcare professional on the sideline determines that the athlete has not suffered a concussion, the athlete may return. What's the definition of an appropriate healthcare profession? The rule book doesn't say. It could be a nurse, It can be a doctor. It can be a paramedic. It can be anybody with a some sort of medical degree. But if a healthcare professional said they can return to the game, they can return to the game. It's not us who make that decision or override a healthcare professional. If there's no appropriate healthcare professional available to evaluate the athlete should not be allowed by the coach to return to play. It says should not, didn't say shall not. Again, coach, it shouldn't come in, but ultimately it's going to be their decision. Athletes with continued concussion symptoms are at significant risk for recurrence and culminative and even catastrophic consequences of a second concussive injury. So stress to the coach. Coach, don't think you should come in. Put it in your report. But we send them off if we think we'll send them off again if we have to, right? So we can't stop them from coming on, but we can stop them from playing. All right, let's get to the next one. A game official discovers a player who is bleeding, an open wound. We know if he's bleeding, get off the field, make sure it's covered. If it's on a uniform, make sure to try to wash it out. It's all about just safety and not passing diseases or any bloodborne pathogens to another player. All right, D. See, we're going to do pretty fast, right? Until we get to E. E's going to be a little bit longer. All right, the helmet comes completely off during the down or subsequent dead ball actions related to the down without being directly attributed to a foul by an opponent. So in this diagram, you see runner was going forward for progress to stop. Helmet came off. He has to go off the field for one play. However, if there's a foul, he doesn't. So if it's a face mask and the helmet come off, and that was contributed to the helmet coming off, the player may remain in the game, do not have to go out for at least one play. Unless you think it's concussion or something like that's going on, okay? Now, before I go further, since I'm going pretty fast, because there's another misapplication of the rule that I see a lot, there is no foul for a player taking his helmet off during a dead ball. It's not a personal foul. It's not unsportsmanlike conduct at all. All right? I hear people all the time, keep your helmet on. If the coach wanted a player to keep his helmet on, that's a different story. But there is no recourse or penalty or foul for a player taking his helmet off doing a dead ball. The rule says that doing a live ball, players must wear required equipment, not doing a dead ball. So if he takes the helmet off, walk off the field, or takes the helmet off to come on the field, that's completely fine. There is no foul. If you want to take his helmet off on a timeout or an official timeout, there is no foul to take your helmet off doing a dead ball. Now, NCAA may have something different. The NFL may have something different. That does not apply at the high school or youth level. Just want to put that in. Okay, and before we go further in this, I'm going to come to you as though I'm an NFHS representative. Okay, I'm a teacher straight down the line at 100%. What I'm going to teach you may or may not be applied at your high school association or your youth organization, but we're going to teach you what the Federation High School rules say, and then there's a lot of nuances that go on from there, and I would try to address it as we go. Understand, at the youth level, some things are ignored and waived, and if you got my email, the 5 things that I listed, we don't really enforce. But at the high school, they want us to enforce this. So I have PowerPoints since 2004 all the way to present. And I went through all the PowerPoints looking for anything addressing players' equipment. And there is a lot. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to cover each and one of these. And I might even do it in an hour. So it's 60 slides total for everything. So let's see if we can get through it all, and let's see if I can beat my hour-and-a-half time frame. All right. So in the recent years, players and sometimes teams seem to be attempting to skirt the NFHS rules governing football uniforms, adornments, and player equipment. Regardless of the reason why it occurs, the outcome is a growing problem because these efforts violate the NFHS football rules and player safety in both. And we know this. We see it in high school, we see it in youth, and I got some videos to prove it. It is the coach's responsibility to control and prevent these rule violations. Officials need to enforce the NFHS football uniform rules. And we see here in 3510E, any required equipment missing or inappropriately worn, the player needs to, there needs to be an official timeout, and the player needs to sit out for at least one play or until covered. All right. Proper wearing and using required equipment. And these are the uniforms that we see here that they're supposed to wear. All right. We got, it's about 12 pieces here. And this is what we want to make sure everybody is wearing. And here we see here that the player equipment on the right is illegal, right? The mouthpiece is altered. The jersey does not reach the top of the pants. Too long, the towel don't meet the dimensions that's laid out in the rule book. We basically become the police. We are the police of the field. All right. So illegally and improperly worn players' equipment. To support the safety of all participants, players must wear equipment and uniform that are properly fitted and worn as intended by the manufacturer. Before starting each game, the head coach must verify that all players are properly and legally equipped. Allowing players to use illegal equipment or to wear required equipment inappropriately could subject the coach to a penalty. Now, when did this become a rule change? Before, it used to be a foul. And you see here, inappropriate worn equipment pertains to all equipment that is otherwise legal but not worn as intended. So this is a definition for when you hear the word improperly worn equipment. What do you mean by that? Is what otherwise would be legal but not worn as intended. And examples we have the pants not covering the knees, which we see a lot of, tooth and mouth protectors not being worn as the play starts. We see a lot of that. And not being, okay, and being worn, let me see, I'm sorry, lost my place. And shoulder pads not properly covered by the jersey. It's just easy to fix. A lot of these things are easy to fix and doesn't require an official timeout because they put the mouthpiece in your mouth, cover the shoulder pads, pull your pants down. Those things that we can fix just by giving verbal communication are what we call preventive officiating. Players who fail to wear required equipment during a down must be replaced for one down. So no thigh pads, no knee pads. You got to go out until you get those put in. You cannot participate. All right. Now, like I was saying before, I got ahead of myself. When did the rules change? Because I remember when it was a foul. And then it went from foul to being in violation. So I did some research, and this is an excerpt from the 2017, and this was a point of emphasis, the uniform. And if you see right here, it says there are 3 types of fouls associated with improper equipment. I almost forgot what the fouls were until I read this 2017 point of emphasis. The first foul occurs when the required equipment is present but not worn properly. Right? There was a 5-yard penalty. If the snap was imminent, you call a dead ball, you give a 5-yard penalty for not having a mouthpiece in. I remember doing it. I remember being in a youth game, throwing a flag, and it had to be like in 2004, 2005. I was new. And we give a 5-yard penalty, a live ball foul. The official observed that it's not in, doing a live ball foul. And I remember my officials told me, if you see a player doing a play that doesn't have their mouthpiece in their mouth, assume that they had it in and it fell out during the play. All right? And that's what it's talking about here. Now, the second foul occurs when a player is missing required equipment. This foul is unsportsmanlike conduct foul charged to the head coach, Rule 9.9. So again, if you wasn't wearing thigh pads, hip pads, whatever, it was a 15-yard penalty on the coach. And then the third one, if anybody's wearing illegal equipment, and I pretty much didn't really see that much illegal equipment, and we'll cover what illegal equipment is. If a player is detected wearing illegal equipment, head coach is charged with unsportsmanlike conduct, Rule 9.9. So it's a 5-yard penalty, a 5-yard foul penalty if you don't have your mouthpiece in your mouth. It's a 15-yard penalty if you're missing pads, and a 15-yard penalty when it wearing illegal equipment. Now, it just took a year, less than 12 months, and proper wearing and use of required equipment became a point of emphasis in 2018. But this time, let's read this first, then we'll go read other stuff. It says, prior to the start of each game, the head coach must verify that all players have their proper equipment and that no illegal equipment will be used. This is very important. Before 2018, the referee was asked the head coach, are your players legally equipped? And the coach would say, yes, obviously. But now there's an added to that. Are your players properly equipped and that no illegal equipment will be used? That's very important, that if no illegal equipment will be used. So that's actually what you're supposed to say when you're asking the coach to verify their players legally equipped. The purpose of the equipment rule is to ensure the safety and protection of both the player wearing the equipment and his opponent. Due to the potential for injury, game officials must strictly enforce the equipment rules. Game officials have been reluctant. So this is why the rule changed from 2017 and before that to 2018, because officials was not going to throw a 15-yard penalty on a coach or even a 5-yard penalty. So game officials have been reluctant to penalize a team for failure of a player to properly wear all required equipment. All right. This reluctance may be due to the game officials assuming that equipment violations are minor offenses and do not warrant penalties. In the view of this reluctance, a rule change has been implemented to lessen the severity of the consequence of violating equipment rules. With the lessening severity, it is imperative that the game officials follow appropriate procedures when equipment violations occur. Equipment rules are the extreme important part of the game, and is therefore essential that game officials are diligent to promptly address any and all equipment rule violations. So even, like they said before, officials were very reluctant to penalize teams. And even though they changed the rule and changed it from being a foul to being a violation, I think that reluctancy has been ingrained into officials. They changed it so that we will start enforcing it. But with when they changed it, you had the old timers, the old guard in there, and they said that if that reluctancy was still ingrained in them, and they passed that reluctancy on to new officials. All right. So equipment violations can be grouped into three categories. You notice in 2017 it says 3 fouls. Now they changed it to 3 categories. The first category encompasses the instance where the required equipment is present but not properly worn. All right. If the game official observed any improperly worn equipment during a dead ball period, they should declare an official timeout and ask the player to make the correction. A little different because if you call an official timeout, the player is actually supposed to leave, but here it says they can make the correction, like a dangling mouthpiece, jersey not covering the pads or the bike pads. The game official should have sounded whistle to prevent the snap from occurring, declare an official timeout, and require the player to leave the game for at least one down to address the equipment issues. Doesn't happen, but that's what's supposed to happen, right? And again, we'll talk about why, the different reasons why officials, some of the old guards don't like to do anything in regards to uniform and following these rules. Again, we're still reluctant to follow them. The second category was player missing required equipment. Okay, the official timeout must be declared. The player must leave the game for at least one down and will not be allowed to return to the game until the missing equipment is obtained or properly worn by the player. All right. So you notice it's not an unsportsmanlike conduct toward the head coach anymore. It's just the player must leave the field. This is why we say, coaches, are your players legally equipped and will not use illegal equipment? The third category is when a player wears illegal equipment. If a player is detected wearing illegal equipment, the head coach is charged with an unsportsmanlike conduct foul under Rule 981H. So it's not 99 anymore, it's Rule 981H. And yes, this is the only one that a coach will be charged with an unsportsmanlike conduct foul. Is when they detected wearing illegal equipment, not having missing equipment, not wearing it properly. Again, they changed it because the officials being reluctant, and so it's good to know. So it's no longer a foul, sort of. Now, I say sort of because now we come to the 2025 football point of emphasis. I sent this out in an email. I asked you to read it, and hopefully you did. Again, you guys, you're in school, and this is part of your practice. You know, the players go out there and they practice during the week, like 3 times a week with their coaches, running plays, going over formations. This is how we practice. We read, right? Our skill is our knowledge of the game and how to apply it. So yes, you get homework assignments, and I ask that you officials do them because it's important. This is how we elevate our game. So I'm gonna read this, and there's patting itself on the back. I think they're gaslighting us, but hey, let's read it anyway. Despite the lack of enforcement at the college level, and this is where the kids mimic, right? The kids come on the field and they have their pants laid above their knees. They try to wear the smallest shoulder pads. They got they do all this other fancy stuff because they're trying to mimic what they see in college. And that's what makes it so hard to do our job, right? They mimic what they see at the collegiate level. And we got to tell them they can't, right? The NFHS is proud of the work high school players, coaches, and the game officials have done to properly enforce all rules that reduce the risk of injury. The rules and regulations governing high school football are designed to reduce the injury risk of players while maintaining the integrity and fairness of the game. These rules, often overlooked by the casual spectator, play a crucial role in protecting the athletes and preserving the uniformity of team appearance. Despite the negative influence by levels of play beyond the high school. Again, that's what we're dealing with. The negative influence by the levels played beyond high school, college, NFL. Coaches and game officials must remain vigilant with enforcement of the equipment rules currently placed at the high school level. All right. And again, I know I got some old guards on here, and that reluctancy is still ingrained in us, and we're ingrained it in our new officials. The question is it right? Should we or should we not enforce the rules? Now, I know that the problem, or not the problem, the big issue in enforcing these rules is, are we going to get backed up by our high school association, by the governing county, the AD? They're going to tell you, yeah, enforce the rules. Don't have mouthpiece, put them out the game. And you're gonna do it. You're gonna put their best player out the game because they don't have a mouthpiece, or their mouthpiece is dangling, or whatever the case may be. The head coach will get pissed off. They're gonna send an email in saying, "I don't want this referee doing any more of my games." Why? Because they're enforcing the equipment rule, and you're gonna find yourself losing for winning. And then it's a really sad state of affairs that we have, but we're called to enforce it, and I know it's hard, it's a tough balance in between. Typically, what I suggest is just go to the head coach. Coach, you got to help me out with number 4. All right, he got to keep his mouthpiece in his mouth, coach, or I'm going to be forced to put him out the game for a play. He's your best player, so can you work with me, coach? Talk to number 4 about keeping his mouthpiece in his mouth. So recruit the coach on your side before you even start. That way the coach will get on the player and keep his mouthpiece in his mouth without us going directly nuclear and then have to deal with the fallout. And a nuclear fallout is never good. So let's talk about this. I read this in a 2025 point of emphasis, and I thought it was interesting because I think someone last week asked, what do we do if a player keep violating the equipment rule? They keep their mouthpiece out their mouth. You told them over and over and over and over again. And I'm like, well, I said, but the rules don't really say anything about how to deal with it. I mean, we just keep pulling them out. But that's before I read the 2025 point of emphasis. Non-compliance with these rules can result in various penalties, ranging from removal of a player for one play for improperly worn equipment to unsportsmanlike penalty on the head of coach for a player or legally equipped following a pre-game certification. Now, chronic violations of the rule for properly worn equipment can significantly impact the game's fairness and safety. Repeated offenses of individual players' well-being, but also negatively impact the pace of the game and the fairness of the opposing team. When players persistently disregard the equipment guidelines, there are several administrative options within the current NFHS rules. One, a delayed game penalty would be a logical consequence for persistent offensive that significantly impact the pace of the game. So what they're saying is, if you got to stop it, get out because you don't got your mouthpiece, and you stop it again, get out, you don't got your mouthpiece again. Because this is delaying the game, and in Rule 3 under the delay of game, it says anything that delays the game can be a delay of game. That's a recourse. Now we're back to the 5-yard penalty, but it's not for the uniform, it's for a delay of game. The next one is chronic violations of equipment rules by players could result in unsportsmanlike conduct. Foul for being assessed under Rule 153C, 10, and 981H for equipment not worn as intended by the manufacturer. You could go to Rule 985, where a player failed to obey an official. So it's telling us that there are some tools in our tool bag that we can use if we need to. Finally, a coach who demonstrates the lack of of interest in supporting these important rules of our sport could be easily judged as an acting in unsportsmanlike manner. Now, let me tell you about these tools in your tool bag. If you try to use them, it may not go well for you. Okay. I remember when I was I went to Ranger School. They gave us rain gear, a rain jacket, a rain pants. When it rains, we can put it on. We got soaking wet, and we never pulled that rain outfit out of our reposite. It was just in our bag, hanging out in the bag, and never used, although we had it, because our ranger instructor said we couldn't use it. So again, always check with your high school association. Do they want to go nuclear and use the chronic violators option, delay a game, unsportsmanlike conduct, or do they want you just to continue to ignore it and just continue to talk to the players and not do anything at all, right? I know it's crazy, but that's just the life. Now, required equipment is broken up into 3 parts. Players' equipment. We got mandatory equipment, we have auxiliary equipment, and we have illegal equipment, and we have exceptional. All right. But I'm thinking maybe before we go here, let me show you some videos. My time will look good. Let's go to some videos. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about in regards to officials literally ignoring. Make sure I got the volume off. Let me, I'm going to go out first. All right. I want to make sure the volume is on. I'm turning the volume off. We don't need no volume. Okay. All right. Let's look at some plays before we go any further to show case in point. And these are just clips that I did about 6 clips a few minutes ago. Hold on. Okay. So we see this player back here. He's been a kickoff receiver. If you notice, he does not have his mouthpiece in at all. No one say anything to him. The ball is kicked, and he's out playing. All right. So we see it with no mouthpiece in. All right. So let's get out of that one. Let's go to another one. Let's go to this one. This is the quarterback. No mouthpiece. And it's still dangling, and the play is off. No one stopped the play. No one told him he got to get out the game. They ignored it. And this is, I'm sorry, went the wrong one. And this is what typically happens every high school game. So let's go to this one. The quarterback. This is the same game. I just scanned through it real fast. So you see him, he has no mouthpiece in his mouth. Absolutely none. All right. There go another one. No mouthpiece. Okay. I'm going to use, when we start talking about false starts and encroachment, I'm going to use this clip. They actually call this encroachment. Uh, I think it's a false start. The offense made an abrupt motion and drew them off, and they got an encroachment. So we're not talking about encroachments today or false starts, but yeah, I just want to show that I just wanted to show a couple of things real fast in regards to there are a lot of players out there, a lot of teams. There was, I mean, I watched the whole game, skimming through it, and noticed that a lot of mouthpiece dangling. And in youth football, I see as we yelling at the players all day, we stopping plays, and continue to do that. I'm not gonna say don't do it, but just understand that this is a chronic problem and a very reluctant problem among officials, and it's never going to be fixed until we all get on the same page. All right, let's get back to this. There's three players' equipment in Rule 1.5. So we got 3, 5, 10. This is Rule 1.5. On the player's equipment, we talk about mandatory equipment, auxiliary equipment, illegal equipment, and exceptions to the illegal equipment. All right, the football helmet. So we're gonna go from helmet. I'm gonna go real fast from helmet down. All right. So one of the required equipment, is the helmet. An exterior warning label is required on the back of the helmets. Face mask and helmet must meet the NASCA standards. You see on the notes here, all players shall wear helmets that carry the warning label regarding the risk of injury, and the manufacturers and reconditioner certification indicating satisfaction of the NASCA standards. All such reconditioned helmets shall show recertification and to indicate satisfaction with the NASCA standards. The coach pre-game verification to the referee and another game official that all players are legally equipped and in compliance with the rules, include the exterior warning label. I remember when I found this out, we don't chase warning labels on helmets, okay? So Federation rules, if there's no warning label on the back of the helmet, it is an unsportsmanlike conduct foul, and the player can't use that helmet. I know, right? But I'm an NFHS representative right now, so I'm gonna just give you the rules. But we don't chase helmets. We don't look on the back of the helmet and see if they have a sticker. But that's the rule. Okay. In 2026, that's when they changed from a 2-point strap to a 4-point strap is required. And if you just go back right from that one we just read, the helmets shall be secured by a properly fastened chin strap for at least 4 attachment points. So again, if a player got one of them dangling, it has to be buckled. Tell them to buckle it up because that's what he needs to do. All right, let's talk about jerseys. The home jersey is dark. So before 2021, it was, sometimes players would get together, teams would meet up in high school, and their jerseys would be the same color. Y'all know we do youth games, and they both got blue or red or black jerseys. You're like, how are we supposed to officiate this game, right? It's quite difficult. So at the high school level, home team got to wear dark jerseys, all right? No more anything with white in it, all right? So jerseys of the home team shall be the same dark color and clearly contrast white. We see here, these jerseys are legal because of the same dark color. All players of the home team shall wear the same dark colored jersey in order to comply with the rule. However, this is illegal. Although they're both dark jerseys, they have to be the same dark color that clearly contrast, right? Just because they got a dark red and a dark blue, this is still illegal at the high school level. Let's talk about the numbers. And again, we going through this at talking about high school. And But if you think about the youth games that you've done, you know why this is important, especially with the numbers. Some teams have numbers so small on the side and the front. Sometimes they have no numbers on the front, and then they have these funky numbers on the back. And then they ask you what number, and you're like, I can't legibly read that number. I mean, it's got some, what's a different font? I'm trying to think of a cool font, but some cursive font, and it's like, I can't read it. So this is why in high school they make these rules in order so we can clearly see the numbers and we can clearly address the player. So effective 2024, which is last year, the entire body of the number shall be a single solid color that clearly contrasts with the body color of the jersey. So obviously the home team wouldn't be able to wear number 1 because they can wear number 4, and the visiting team can wear number 1, but it has to clearly contrast the colors. Again, when they have those camouflage jerseys and with those pink orange letters and you can barely read it, this is why in high school you can't do it. Youth give you a great example why you can't do it. All right, so they changed this rule. It used to be 1 through 99. Now it's 0 through 99. Double zeros or any number preceded by 0 is illegal. In youth, you'll see double zeros. It's just youth. We don't enforce this at the youth level. But at high school, you cannot have double zero. All right, and a new rule that the school mascot is considered a liable adornment to the jersey in addition to the numbers, school's nicknames, school logos, school names, or players' names. So they can have that. Here we go. These jerseys are illegal. Play pick A. The jersey is longer than the top of the pants. Thus, it must be tucked in. And play pick B, the shirt beneath the jersey, that must be tucked in. All right. So we see here in rule 1.5, a jersey is unaltered from the manufacturer, original design and production, and which shall not be long enough to reach shall be long enough to reach the top of the pants, or shall be tucked in. If longer, it must completely cover the shoulder pads and all pads worn above the waist and torso. So again, if you got the jersey, got to be covered, and the bike pad has to be covered. Now, again, do we enforce this at the youth level? We don't. You can if you want. You can tell them to cover it. Florida Elite allow them to do it, and some other youth. So we typically just turn a blind eye and don't enforce these rules. Remember, youth programs are not affiliated with NFHS, so they can use any of the rules they would like to use. Okay. Due to the potential injury, it is essential that players only be allowed to participate if their pants and knees completely comply with the rules. Pants must completely cover the knees. Knee pads must be worn over the knees. Game officials should be watchful and proactive in addressing potential equipment and more essential knee pad issues. Again, I can show you tons of videos where officials just are reluctant to enforce it. And if you look at the top here, that's the rule in 1.5. Pants which completely cover the knees, thighs, guards, knee pads, and any portion of any knee brace that does not extend below the pants. All right. So this is a rule that has to be followed. All right. So the required equipment shouldn't be altered, shouldn't be cut to meet anything that the refs want to do. It can't be done. So we got to be careful of that. That it doesn't happen. Okay. All right. So pads, protective equipment, player pads, protective, hip pads and tailbones unaltered from the manufacturer, an original design. Knee pads unaltered um, from the manufacturer, original design, and it gets some thickness there for shock absorption materials. So no cutting of the pads. Now, talking about that, let's talk about mouthpieces. This is illegal, and I'm gonna tell you what some players do. Y'all might know this. What they'll do is they will cut the edges off, so when they put it in, it looks like they have it in, but it only covering this far. It's not going all the way back. What players don't know is that a mouth protector help prevent concussions, or at least that's what it says, right? So we talked about concussions. One of the preventions of concussions is properly wearing your mouthpiece. So concussion prevention, put your mouthpiece in the mouth. If you see a player who cut their mouthpiece or chewed it, it has to be replaced for a new mouthpiece, right? It should be boiled. It should be, they boil it and sit their teeth in it. They mold their teeth into it. That's the appropriate way, but we got to be careful of that. Now, in 2026, these mouth protectors will be illegal. And I saw a player with, not like this, it was like the one on the right. These are illegal, starting 2026. Any attachment to the mouthpiece. Remember, the NFHS are extremely against any player singly focusing and drawing attention to themselves, right? It's a team sport. They want everybody to be in a uniformity, and no one should be, your skills and should make you shine, nothing else, all right? These mouthpieces are legal. They can have some designs on it, that's cool. They just can't have no extra extremities on the mouthpiece. Now, a player wearing two mouthpieces, we see that recently in a player with two mouthpieces on there. If you look at the top, the rationale for making this change is further clarify the players may only one tooth and mouth protector. Players have increasingly been wearing one tooth and mouth protector attached to the face mask while simultaneously having one in their mouth, unseen by the game officials. And the reason why this is so important, is because if I'm supposed to stop the game because you're not wearing your mouthpiece and send you out, only to stop it to see that, oh, you got one in, how can we officiate if you're wearing one in your mouth and one on the outside? If we see the one dangling, we're going to think you don't have one in. So you're only going to have one on your mouthpiece. If you have it on your attached to your helmet, your face mask, you only can have one. So you can't have one in your mouth and one in your mask, only one. And they can be any color, black, white, clear, or white. Now, I can remember when they made the white and clear illegal, only to bring it back and make it legal later on. All right, if they wear gloves, they must have the logo of NASCA or SFIA. Again, if you want to chase down gloves, and let me see your label. No, be my guest. No officials chase down and watch gloves. It's a rule that we must know, but I don't ever remember asking a player in high school, let me see the certification on the gloves. All right, here go another one. Gloves, hand pads, forearm pads, all must have to be legal, must have that brand. FHA must get a kickback from them. All right, so the compressive sleeves are no longer considered an adornment and are now legal to be worn. Even without pads, sleeves should be free of any written words or images. However, in 2027, 2 years from now, they all must meet this SFI specification and must be visible and appear legible on the exterior of the arm sleeve. Again, either NFHS own them or they're getting a kickback from them. And so if you want to wear it, it has to be that. If they don't have it, they can't wear it. All right, let's talk about illegal equipment. We're almost done. All right, let's talk about illegal equipment. With the exceptions. All right. All right, so illegal, we see A, B, C, D, and E, wearing jewelry, tinted eye shields, non-compliant eye shades, band horns, band worn around the arm. If you can see number 6, at first I didn't see it, but it's there. Hold on, let me see something. Let's see here. Where's my thing here? Whatever. I can't find it. Okay. So if you look at 60, he got like a little red band around his arm and then a towel not meeting the specifications. All right. Illegal equipment. So video, audio are illegal equipment. Player can't have it. Officials can have it, but players can't have any audio. So, you know, you see players out there, they're being recorded. It's not allowed. Audio or cameras on a player uniform. Anything that a player wears that looks like a flag is illegal. They can't have it. All right. So gloves, socks, towels, anything that resembles a flag is illegal. And you can imagine why. So eye shades. And again, this we don't enforce this at the youth level. They can't have any writing in it, any images. All that they can wear are just plain old eye shades with nothing in them. So this right here is what we consider we have illegal with the exception that they can have this. All right, so that's illegal with the exception. With the towels, it has to be solid color. The player now it used to be a rule where they have to all be the same color. They changed it. They don't have to be the same color anymore. It had to be more absorbent towel, so it can't be a towel that don't absorb like plastic. And if you and I'm not talking. I don't think I have on here. No, I don't have it. The dimensions. I think it's like 8 by 12 or 18 by 36 or whatever the case may be. We're gonna bring a tape measure and measure the towel. These little towels you see in youth, it may not be. They use it more for adornment than practicality of towels. It may not be legal. I haven't measured it, but yeah. Now here in this picture here, 81, that towel would be illegal because it's not a solid color. So 74 and 50 are fine. 81 is not fine. If it was just solid blue, it would be fine. But because it's not a solid color, don't ask me why it's illegal. It's illegal. So we see this a lot. Players wearing bands on their thighs, on their necks. In high school, this is illegal. If you look at the rule above, moisture-absorbing sweatbands, when worn on the wrist, beginning at the base of the thumb, shall extend no more than 3 inches toward the elbow. So it can come about right here. It can't come to the elbow, above the elbow. And youth, we let them do what they want, but in high school, they can't do this. The play cards have to be on the arm. Play cards on the waist is now illegal. Well, it's been illegal since 2012. But yeah, so play cards only can be on the wrist. They cannot be on the waistline. That's illegal, with the exception of being on the arm. Religious medals can be worn if it's on. It had to be under the shirt or taped to be safe. Okay, so it is illegal if it's dangling, with the exception if you tape it to the arm or whatever case may be, it is legal. Um, Hard pads, this is illegal. You can't have a brace above your of your pants. The Any hard surfaces on the arms have to be wrapped with 1 inch thickness, a half-inch thick, no, one half-inch thickness. And umpire, that's your job to check all of that to make sure that's illegal. But yeah, so anything you have hard on you has to be padded so it won't impose an injury. And we have here the following items of pad and paddings: knee and ankle braces, which are altered, are original from are illegal. Knee braces worn over the pants is illegal. Rear pads and back protectors, unless fully covered by jersey. So there's illegal with the exception if you cover it, now it's legal. All right. Again, altering the legal pads is illegal. So this is the other illegal equipment not worn intended by the manufacturer. So if you're cutting and they try to cut things and make things a certain way, that becomes an illegal equipment because it's not worn as intended by the manufacturer. And that is it. I did it before an hour and a half. If you want, you can unmute yourself and ask me any questions and see